Hello, out there in computer laptop land. This is Jonathan Eder, and the piano lesson. I have a very big, long, exciting show planned for you today. But first, I wanted to start with a little anecdote. I have a relative that I care for, an older relative, who happens to have, like many older people, issues with remembering things. And I wanted to talk about memory because a lot of people, a lot of musicians have trouble memorizing things. And the first step to memorizing anything is to make it meaningful. And I'll illustrate that through this story. My particular relative, who was 90, had a lot of trouble remembering things, but he loves furniture. And we had gone out and bought a set of beautiful upholstered chairs that we got a great deal on. But when he looked at the chairs today, he was very disoriented, and we had originally gone together to buy the chairs. And he said, "Where did these chairs come from? Did you buy them?" And I said, "No, we went together." And I recounted the trip that we took through the wine country and various things that happened, and going to the people's homes to buy the chair. And I said, "Yeah, and we got a great deal on them." He said, "Yeah, $40 a piece." Now, as long as I've known my relative, Arnold, he remembers prices. He doesn't remember anything else, but he remembers prices. And I said, and I said, you don't remember anything else, but you remember prices. He says, "Yeah, because they're important to me." And I thought, well, yeah, but isn't that the whole crux of living, of the human condition, is that, we tend to remember, we tend to care about things that are important to us, which is natural. But let's just take that one step further. Children only remember things, only do things that they like at the moment, right? It's a little different when you're older, because that's really not particularly realistic. Even in the most ideal of circumstances, we are all going to be put in situations that we may not like or we'd be unfamiliar with. So as a musician, I'm putting the context of being a musician, no matter how talented we are, no matter how intelligent, no matter how well educated, no matter how much we practice, right? At some point, we're going to hit a wall. We're going to encounter a piece of music that we can't relate to, we don't like, we think is boring. And by the way, that might hold true if you're a teacher, that might hold true of a student. You might think, oh, this person, I really don't want to teach them, or they can't learn anything, or, and all of that is the fault of the musician. It's not the fault of the student. It's certainly not the fault of the composer. If you ever pick up a piece of Beethoven or Mozart or Bach or Chopin or whatever, and you don't like it, that's your problem. That's not, Chopin's problem, because Chopin's dead now, but still, that's not Chopin or Mozart or Beethoven's problem, right? Your job is to find something in the music that is meaningful to you. And the next step is to convey that to an audience. You need to be able to, some people refer to as sell the song, or what, I think it's a little, maybe not the best analogy, but our job, we're a little bit like priests, we're there to kind of bring people into the fold, and that includes ourselves. And that's why I love teaching, because I approach every opportunity to teach as if I'm a beginner. I don't want the baggage of, being experienced or the best player. I mean, yes, of course, we all need experience, and we all need some talent and practicing and all that, but it's always better to approach things as a beginner, because if you don't, especially if you deal with very complex pieces of music, it'll all fall apart like a house of cards, and also we tend to become a little jaded and habituated to how we hear these pieces. We always want to rediscover them and hear them as a new piece of music. And that really is the the test of a great musical composition, right? I mean, you can have an army of people playing one piece of music, one little song, right? And if they're approaching the music in a sincere way, in an intelligent way, you could have 100 different performances that are all equally viable, equally important, right? And you never really exhaust the possibilities in a great piece of music. Conversely, a piece of music that's not so great, that's going to be more challenging. Although still, the job of a musician is to take anything, no matter how seemingly how insipid or trite, and make it into something. Certainly, Mozart had variations on Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, 12 variations, and those were, fairly amazing. But getting back to memory, we remember things that are meaningful to us. So in music, how can you make things meaningful? Well, there's a lot of different ways, but one is, the first step is just to have the attitude. To have the attitude that what you're going to do that day is you're going to have a good attitude, because look, most of the things in life aren't going to come easily, right? And if we're not going to make an effort to find meaning in what we're doing, really we're missing out. We're missing the boat on most of life. Most of life is not going to just present itself and open itself up to us. That's why we're dedicated to what we're doing. We're dedicated to making music. We're dedicated to practicing, right? We're dedicated to exploring. It's taken me a lifetime, really a lifetime, just to read a page of music, just to read a page of a Beethoven sonata and really see what's on the page, really read the score. That's probably the number one comment I've heard all through my life whenever I've attended a master class, is read the score. It's a very easy thing, so seemingly simple thing to do, but it's not so easy. Are the stems going up or down? Or what are the notations? Can you really rely on your knowledge of the notations, or are you perhaps misinterpreting them? There are markings that look like dynamic markings in, say, Beethoven's music that are not dynamic markings in Mozart's music or in Chopin's music. That is an indication of a rubato in the tempo. So being able to approach everything we're doing, for instance, and I have the same attitude with a student. If a student isn't understanding something, that's my problem. That's not their problem. I haven't reached them in the right way. I'm not explaining things in the right way, even if that might not be the case, right? But you have to have the attitude. You have to have the attitude that you want to reach people. That's the beauty of learning, the beauty of education. There's nothing more beautiful than a meeting of the minds. And not to get political, but to me, that's also the definition of what it means to be a liberal. A liberal is someone who is open-minded and believes that it's not impossible to have a meeting of the minds, and that you don't have to treat people as if they're objects and be frightened of them, right? You can talk to them and reason with them, and actually. I guess I'm straying a bit today, but I was reading some of Thomas Jefferson's writings. I like to read Thomas Jefferson, and I particularly like to read the inaugural speeches of presidents. And I was reading Jefferson's inaugural address, which I highly recommend, and is relatively short, but one of the overarching ideas in his inaugural address was just that. It was the idea that we should be a reasonable people, and that the idea of government was to protect one another from doing harm to one another. It was not, by the way, to protect from outsiders invading, as we often hear, but it was to have a civil society where we could feel safe to be ourselves and to tolerate one another's differences, because in the end we're all really part of the same family. So the idea again that to be able to memorize something is to try to find meaning in the music. It's music is a language, so there's subtle things. You have to first find musical phrases. Is it a two-note phrase, a three-note phrase, a four-note phrase, a two measures, a three? And what is the musical idea, and how does one musical idea go to another musical idea, and where does it come from logically, reasonably? There has to be some type of rationale to what you're doing, and that has to be explained by a teacher. That's why great musicians study their whole lives, and what they're looking for is they're looking really to open their minds, because no one can know everything. And most of the music that we play is written by someone else. So we have to kind of step into their shoes and try to understand the music from their vantage point to the best of our ability. But that's really what we're trying to do as musicians. Is we're trying to be open-minded and connect with the music, and then take that connection and transmit it to an audience. Even if it's an audience of one other person, that's still enough, even if it's yourself, okay? But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the music meaningful. Now, there are other ways to make it meaningful in a bit more specialized way for musicians, right? You can make it meaningful in terms of music theory. I happen to love music theory, and theory, again, is just a language to explain or express something, to try to objectify something that which is really abstract, right? Music is completely abstract. It's just sound. So it takes a long time to be able to process that information, to be able to hear it. In fact, I just happened on an article about sound cancellation headphones, and the criticism of the sound cancellation headphones was that people are missing out on the real world and are treating everything as if it's a product to be bought and sold, as a consumerist event, and sort of really just existing in their own little limited universe, their own myopic world, right? We, as musicians, we want to we learn a piece of music, but we learn it within the context of all music that's come before us, and maybe music that's come after us. But music theory, the word theory, all right, I think of a theory as a fact, but it's a big fact. It's a big idea, and it has context. So knowing music theory is a way to make something meaningful. You start to see patterns, and you start to digest things, digest ideas. Another way is just simply the physical aspect of it, right? I mean, you could simply learn your instrument so that you approach it instinctively, right? Like a basketball player shoots a basketball and they don't even think about it. So that's another aspect. There's the ear training aspect of it, right? Or there's the visual aspect when you're reading music. Although some people also think of music in terms of visual pictures and colors. Whatever it takes, words, the words to a song, those are really interesting and really important, and frankly something that I was not particularly interested in as a young person. I've become much more interested in that, but you see how the words and the music in great pieces of music, like Gershwin, George and Ira Gershwin, for a great writing team, right? They were just dovetailed together in such a beautiful way. So you could never even imagine the piece without words. And that helps you to connect to the piece and remember it. Anything you can do, right, to take the piece and transpose it, okay? And by the way, transposing, for a lot of people, you mention the word transposing and people go, oh, that's just so hard. I can't do. Well, again, making it manageable. That's the other half of the coin, right? So you don't do the entire piece in all 12 keys, right? And you don't do the entire arrangement. You just do the bass line, okay? You just practice the bass. Frankly, the bass line is the most important aspect of the whole piece. So you practice the bass line first, and you observe the interval relationships and see if you can do that in a couple of 3 different keys, because you don't want to be limited to just playing mechanically, right? And then the playing becomes brittle and insecure, and frankly, what you're doing is you're conditioning yourself to feel insecure. And then when you go to play, you bring that baggage with you, and you don't want to bring that baggage with you. But the idea of transposition really should just be an act of curiosity, okay? And exploration and experimentation and fun. It's not meant to be drudgery. So I just thought that little story was interesting, because here's someone who, by all accounts, my 90-year-old relative, who is supposedly has severe dementia or Alzheimer's, but somewhere in there, the memory's working. Like, the memory's working, right? So what would one have to do if you're in that situation, or to prevent yourself from getting into that situation? It's more of an attitude than the actual physical brain power. Let's say your brain cells may be compromised in some way, right? But you can punch through that by finding the things that you care about, and then taking that and making an effort to care about other things that you might not think you care about. But actually, in reality, you may in fact discover that you care about the thing that you thought you didn't care about. You might even care about that more than the thing that you thought you gave up that you cared about. It's human mind's a very funny thing. But that's what you do as a musician. And again, if you encounter a piece of music and it seems boring, well, you know, it's not that the piece of music is boring, and it's not that you're boring necessarily, but you need to open up and say, okay, what is it? What I'm not connecting with this piece. What is it about it? Is it the tone you're getting? Is it the tempo that you're taking? Is it the way you're phrasing it? Is it, any number of things that could make that piece of music reveal itself to you, like a flower opens up. It's not, playing music isn't it isn't a war, okay? It's not violent. It's not something that you conquer, right? It's something that it's a meeting of the minds, right? Music exists whether we pay attention to it or not. It really doesn't care about us, right? And that's a good thing, okay? If we want to be aware of it, we can, or not. And it's also beyond the reach of human beings in the sense that unlike the living things on the earth, which can go extinct and can be meddled with, music is really beyond the reach of human beings. It has been going on since time immemorial and before then, and it will go on after us. And we could explain it in a variety of different ways. We could explain it in terms of physics, in terms of vibration, in terms of the overtone series, in terms of any number of these things. But for some mysterious reason, we feel compelled to connect with sound. And it's sort of an absurd thing, and it really is a mystery. And when we start examining sound, we find that there are certain relationships that we like consistently and we want to do over and over again, just like cooking, just like food, just like playing games. They make rules, and it can lend itself to an intellectual discussion as well. But there is this aesthetic quality, this mysterious kind of human connection, and often we have to kind of break these rigid intellectual rules in order to make the music the most meaningful, which is kind of a seeming contradiction in a sense. But and again, I talk about jazz mostly, but kind of playing in the cracks or bending notes, or we do that in all kinds of music. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to talk about today. And if you have any thoughts, I would appreciate hearing from you. And I thought I would just give a little smattering of an exercise to do for those folks who are interested in learning to improvise. So I think of improvisation, one way I think of improvisation is a bit like a building game, like Lego. And you can put these little blocks of information together and I'll show you what I mean. So the most common musical form, when we're talking about improvisation, you have to have some container to hold the song in, right? Some form. So we're talking about a blues, which is the most fundamental form. We're talking about 12 bars. And we have typically the thing that of all the elements of music that are important in creating a melodic idea, it's actually the rhythmic element that's probably the most important, at least in jazz. So, and the rhythmic element is typically what we call syncopated, so that the weak beats are accented as opposed to the strong beats. One of my favorite tunes is a Duke Ellington tune called C Jam Blues, and probably a lot of you guys have heard it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba-da, 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 ba-da. That's a perfect fourth. Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da. 1 and 2 and. There's your syncopation. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2. So that's just the. So the same melodic line works over various chords, okay? There's a great tune, Woodchopper's Ball, that was written by Woody Herman. And by the way, these names that you might not know, Woody Herman, for instance, another great clarinet player like Benny Goodman, composer. I actually got to meet in person when I was a lot younger, and I got to be in a band that was conducted by him. So those names actually have a real meaning to me. They're not just some obscure guy printed on a page. There's a tune called Woodchopper's Ball, and just one note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hear the rhythm. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 4. That's just the syncopation I'm talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, da, da, ba, ba, 4 chord. 1. 5 chord. And then just kind of ends. But this repetition, so let's just take those two ideas, and you have. Going back to the key of C. I could do that same tune in the key of C. Maybe I will. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was originally written D flat. took those two pieces and kind of melded them together. Or I could flip it. I could start with that idea. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I started with the Woodchopper's Ball and ended with the C Jam Blues, right? And I could keep doing that as many tunes as I have. Here's another great tune, Symphony Sid, Jump for Symphony Sid, Lester Young, great tenor saxophone player. Notice the repetition. Now I have the three tunes that I'm kind of combining, right? See where I'm headed with this? So what is my improvisation? Well, my improvisation is simply creating more of a stew, right? This is kind of a big, like I'm cooking, right? And I have an ingredient here, an ingredient there, an ingredient there, right? And I'm putting them all together. But the pot, okay, the pot is the musical form. It's the 12-bar blues. It's how I'm spacing, right, and organizing 4-bar phrases. It's the 3 4-bar phrases over 12 bars. Okay, we are out of time, but I wanted to give you a little bit of that. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, and drop me a line if you're interested in learning and maybe having a private lesson online. Give me a call. Okay, take care. This is Jonathan Eder and the piano lesson. Bye-bye.